Hi, my name is AD Robles, and I've got a lot of new subscribers in the last month, probably like 5 or 6 times more than normal. Which thank you for being here, and I hope you find my videos helpful. So just wanted to give you a quick introduction since a lot of you are new. Plus, I have a feeling that a lot of people are going to watch this video just because of the topic. But anyway, my name is AD Robles. I'm a YouTuber that does a lot of videos on the social justice movement in Christianity in particular. I do a lot of other videos as well, but that's really where I got my start and really the main purpose of my channel. That being said, I want to give you some information about my intersectionals. I'm a Puerto Rican. My whole family is Puerto Rican. I have 3 young boys that are half Puerto Rican, half white, and I live in New Hampshire, which doesn't really have a lot of ethnic diversity, so I'm kind of insulated from a lot of that stuff, but I didn't grow up in a place like that. I grew up in Connecticut mostly. My family's all from New York City, so diversity has been all around me for a very long time. I've had black friends, Asian friends, white friends. I've had friends every color of the rainbow, and all of that kind of stuff. But I wanted to offer my perspective here as a Puerto Rican, but really just as a Christian is really what's most important to me, Christianity, because, you know, we're going through an interesting time right now. If you're watching this, chances are that you or someone you know has been very influenced by the ideas of the social justice movement, Black Lives Matter, and things like that. And I think that that stuff is very dangerous, especially, and please hear me, especially for minorities. You know, people often say that what we should do is listen. We should listen and lament, right? And so I agree with the listening part. I think it's always a good idea to listen to different perspectives. The lament part, I think, really depends. It really depends on what someone's lamenting, whether or not you should lament with them. In fact, I did a video last week called I Will Not Lament With You that I highly recommend that you watch, because the idea is being put forward that you just need to listen and then lament is like the automatic next step. And I just don't think that's the case, because so often listening really just means listen and shut up. And so what we want to do is we want to be Christians about this. We want to listen and talk it out like equals. We want to listen and talk it out. And so what I'm asking you to do is to follow your own advice and listen to this perspective. Listen to what I have to say. You don't have to agree with it, but I'm asking you to listen. And I think that that's fair to do. I think it's a biblical thing to do. This is a video about Shai Linne's George Floyd and Me article. I found a lot to like about this article. I found a lot to identify with in this article as well. However, I have a very different perspective, and I'd like to offer a response to Shai Linne in this video. Now, a couple things before I get started that you should know. I like Shai Linne. I like his music. My kids listen to his music. His Jesus Kids albums is pretty good. They know all the words of the books of the Bible song. They can even do the voice inflections that Shai Linne does, especially my 3-year-old. He loves it. He absolutely loves it. So I recommend that stuff. The Jesus Kids album is awesome. My kids love it. I think Shai Linne's a good guy, all that kind of stuff. And, you know, there's also something that I've talked about on my channel many times before, that not everybody in the social justice movement is equal. There's people that I think are kind of swept up in it, and then there's people that I think are bad actors. I don't get the impression that Shai Linne is a bad actor. I think he's after the glory of Christ. I think he's after making much of Jesus Christ as opposed to making much of his political ideologies. Not everybody's like Shai Linne, so that's why I'm responding to this one, and I hope you find this helpful. One thing I wanted to say, so the first part of this article is actually pretty good. He talks about the unity in Christ, around the message of Christ, even with people who don't necessarily like hip-hop. They like his message, and he thinks that's so beautiful, and I do too. I think that the Church of Jesus Christ, not just Christian hip-hop, but the Church of Jesus Christ is amazing that it's ethnically diverse, but at the same time culturally Christian. I think we should all be seeking to approach things and live life more as a cultural Christian. That's not a naughty word, by the way. Some people use cultural Christian as an insult, and I don't think that's an insult. It doesn't mean because you're culturally Christian doesn't exempt you from also being a real Christian. We should be living as a Christian even as we're converted by the Holy Spirit. So anyway, I wanted to just kind of skip the first part. It's really good. You should read it. The one thing, though, that I did want to say before I get to the main part of this is really a way that Shai Linne and a lot of people who write for Gospel Coalition and people that are involved in Big Eva in that way, the way that he kind of poisons the well And I say this in as solemn as a way as I can. This is not the way, Shai Linne. And I think you know this, and I'll tell you what I'm referring to in a second. But before he gets into the meat of this article, which the meat of it is a letter he wrote to one of his white sisters about how he's doing in the wake of the George Floyd murder, or killing, I should say. And before he gets into it, this is what he says. He says, "In doing so, I understand that I don't speak for all black people on this issue, though many can resonate with my experience. I also recognize the risk that comes with putting yourself out there and being vulnerable in the age of social media, online trolls, and keyboard vigilantes." And Shai Linne, man, this is not the way. This is really not the way, because it makes people that might have legitimate critiques of what you're saying here, legitimate questions, legitimate responses, it tries to put them in a position where they keep their mouths shut because they don't want to be labeled an online troll. They don't want to be labeled a keyboard vigilante. See, I don't actually care about being labeled any of those things because I know what I'm actually doing. But this is a very kind of a nasty tactic to take, because it takes any opposition to what you're saying here and tries to put them in an immoral category, in a sinning category and stuff like that. And that's really messed up, man. That's really messed up. I really wish you wouldn't have done that. Not so much because, it makes me feel bad, because I know what I'm doing online. I've thought about it. I've thought it through, that kind of stuff. But what I know it does to people that have sensitive consciences, and I really wish you wouldn't do this, Shai Linne. I'm going to ask you just to stop doing that kind of thing. Stop poisoning the well like that up front. It's really not becoming of a Christian. I wouldn't do it to you, and I think that you probably should not do that in the future. But that's just a side issue. I want to encourage anyone who doesn't necessarily take this perspective, and you want to ask Shai Linne questions and stuff like that, treat Shai Linne like you would treat any other person. He's not a wounded puppy. He's out there and he's in this fight and he's putting this stuff out there, and so this is fair game. Don't mistreat him. Don't yell at him. Don't call him names. Don't be a troll. You know what I mean? But responding and asking legitimate questions is not trolling. And unfortunately, this kind of gives it the impression that it is. Let's get to the meat of it, though. This is the letter that he sent to his sister in Christ, who asked him how he was doing. Shai Linne says, "Sister, I'm going to tell you how I'm doing. And as I tell you, please understand that I am incapable of completing this message without weeping. There's a part of me that's saying, quote, spare yourself the pain, Shai, it's not worth it. But I'm choosing not to listen to that part of me because I would be robbing you of an opportunity to bear one another's burdens and to mourn with those who mourn. And I'm sure as a sister in Christ, you'd want to do just that." Once again, let me just step out of the article. I just recommend that you watch my video, I Will Not Lament With You. I posted it last week. Back to the article. He says, "Sister, I'm heartbroken and devastated. I feel gutted. I haven't been able to focus on much at all since I saw the horrific video of George Floyd's murder. The image of that officer with hand in pocket as he calmly and callously squeezed the life out of that man while he begged for his life is an image that will haunt me until the day I die." I want to talk about this part of the paragraph because there's some things in here that are indisputable, and then there's some things in here that they're very disputable. And to mix them together as if they're all just kind of one unit, they're all the same, is very irresponsible. Shai Linne, this is an irresponsible thing to say. Now, on the one hand, he says he's heartbroken and devastated. He's gutted. He hasn't been able to focus since he saw the horrific video of Floyd's murder. Now, a couple things here. Nobody's going to take away somebody's feelings. You feel how you feel. Right? If you see that video, and like 99% of people, you felt horrified by what you saw, including me, I felt horrified by what I saw. It's never good to see someone die, number one. And the image itself of the guy with his knee on his neck, it's revolting. It's revolting. There's no question about it. And not only that, if you feel heartbroken after watching that, you feel gutted, you feel devastated, nobody's going to want to take that away from you. Your feelings are yours, and you feel how you feel. And it's fine to tell somebody how you feel, especially in the Christian church. We ought to be ready to receive your feelings and to think about them. So on the one hand, there's that. And then on the other hand, he mixes those feelings, which are legitimately, he's telling you how he felt. Nobody would want to question that. No, everyone should take that testimony and listen to that testimony and absorb that. But he takes those things that are part of reality. He felt heartbroken, he felt devastated, and then he mixes it up with stuff that's very much opinion. And you can't just put it all out there and expect everyone to take all of it, because that's the idea here. If you're not going to take all of it, then you're really not listening. And I think as Christians, we're required to not accept all of what Shai Linne has said here, because here's the reality. Heartbreak, devastation, gutting, feeling gutted, thinking the video looked horrific, those are facts. But murder, George Floyd's murder, that's not necessarily a fact. In fact, the evidence that we have from the autopsy would seem to indicate that it actually wasn't a murder. I'm not saying it wasn't, but there's a trial that needs to be had. We need to get to the bottom of things. God's law requires that we get to the bottom of such things. He also says that the image of the officer was calm and callous. That's what you saw when you looked into the eyes of Derek Chauvin, callousness. And I'm not going to deny that you saw that, but I'm not going to necessarily believe that Derek Chauvin was callous in that killing. I don't know that he was. He certainly seemed calm to me, but the reality is, like, we have to understand that certain people are trained to be calm in extreme situations. And police officers are one of those people. We don't want police officers that are going to be flying off the handle emotionally when they see something intense. We have to be able to take a step back, right? And police officers and medics, for example, detectives, like they need to go into situations that most of us would go into and we'd probably vomit. Like, I think about medics all the time, EMTs, and they go into like a situation where people are seriously injured, like they're, I don't even want to talk about it. And I would probably vomit. I couldn't do that job. But they're trained to in a way not rob themselves of their humanity, but to dissociate a little bit and to get control of the situation the way they've been trained. Like, that's part of their training. And police officers are definitely one of those people. So their calmness, Shai Linne here is trying to make it seem like he's just not a human. He's just callous. He just squeezed the life out of his person, and he did it callously. There's all kinds of meaning injected into those words. And as Christians, we can't allow ourselves to think with our hearts. You understand what I'm saying? Because I was horrified by that video. But what I need to do is to insist on due process and to insist on withholding judgment until all the facts come out. I've seen some stuff, man. I've seen some stuff. Because I've seen so many videos like this, and then it turns out that it's not really what the video seemed to indicate. The snippet that we saw seemed to indicate. And so while you can be devastated that this man died, it's never good that a man died. You can feel gutted. You can feel heartbroken. You could think it's horrific. It's always horrific to watch a man die, right? Always. That's fine. But just because you've accepted that this is murder, that Derek Chauvin was callous when he squeezed the life out of this man, and I don't accept that without evidence, without a trial and stuff like that, that doesn't mean I'm not listening. That doesn't mean I'm complicit. That doesn't mean I'm a white supremacist. And the reality is, Shai Linne, you have to understand that so many of your buddies are saying, I'm not saying you're saying that. You seem to be putting that perspective forward a little bit. But I'm not going to go with you when it shifts from your feelings to your opinions on the matter. I can't think about the situation with George Floyd and Derek Chauvin with my feelings, or even worse, with your feelings. I can't take the fact that you're weeping as you're writing this and put that on Derek Chauvin. You understand what I'm saying? Derek Chauvin needs to have a fair trial. Do you know anything about how Derek Chauvin was trained? This is an important question, right? This is an important question. Was Derek Chauvin trained to use that kind of a neck hold on that person? I've seen evidence that says that he probably was. And not only was he trained in that way, but he was also trained that that particular neck hold was not a lethal maneuver. You see, cops need to be trained in lethal and non-lethal maneuvers because that's the job that they have. Just like I should be trained in lethal and non-lethal maneuvers. I should be trained how to shoot to kill. I should also be trained to shoot how to shoot to incapacitate. I should also be trained for that kind of thing. And so, do you know how Derek Chauvin was trained? Maybe he was calm because he was trained that that maneuver was a good way to withhold the suspect without threatening their lives. Maybe that's why he was calm. Maybe it has nothing to do with him being callous. Maybe that's how he was trained. Maybe he's been, do you know anything about Derek Chauvin? Do you know, maybe he's been in situations before where he had a different hold on someone, the suspect escaped and nearly killed him. Do you know anything about this guy's background? And I'm saying this with emotion because a Christian is required to think about all sides of this. That's what God's law says. That's why God's law requires that you have 2 or more witnesses before you condemn a man. Nicodemus was insisting on that with the Pharisees when they were trying to condemn Jesus Christ. He said, "No, our law doesn't allow us to do that," because Nicodemus was against lynching, and I'm against lynching too. So, as I was horrified and disgusted and just revolted by that video that I saw, where Derek Chauvin is sitting there on this guy's neck, and the guy ends up dying. By the way, the autopsy seems to indicate that he didn't die from asphyxiation. So this whole idea that he choked the life out of the man is also something that's highly questionable. And we're seeing this in the beginning of a letter that's also mixed up with your emotions that none of us would want to deny. So the thing is that the reason why I think it's inappropriate, Shai, to mix these up is because it puts your readers in a very difficult spot, because on the one hand, we're going to affirm how you felt, but we can't affirm your facts. You see, here's the thing, like, you're entitled to your own opinion. You're entitled to your own feelings, but you're not entitled to your own facts. And the thing is, we need to establish those facts before we can go with you here. And so many of your buddies are saying, if we don't go with you here now, we're complicit. And so you're putting us in this really weird spot where God requires something of us that you're telling us we shouldn't do. We should go with you because you're weeping as you write this email or whatever this was, a letter. And we love you, Shai. We love you. We want to go with you there. We want to be with you there. But we also have this word that insists that we don't think with our emotions. We think with facts. They're God's facts. Every fact that's a fact is God's fact. And so God requires certain things of us when we're dealing with facts. You seem to want us to think that Chauvin was intending to kill this man. First murder in the first degree is probably what a lot of you want. I'm not saying you want this, Shai. You haven't said that. But a lot of people want murder in the first degree. Do you have any idea what murder in the first degree means? If Derek Chauvin wanted to go kill a black guy, he's a police officer. He could probably figure out how to do it without cameras rolling. I urge you to watch. I'm not going to go into it too much, but I got some of this information from Stefan Molyneux. He's an atheist philosopher. He had a police officer on and interviewed him about the Chauvin situation. It's very, very interesting. I'm not saying it proves the case or disproves the case, but what I am going to tell you is that these things are always more complicated than a 10-minute video that you saw and that you're saying, if I don't agree with you on, well, then I'm not listening. I'm not sitting with you. I'm not lamenting with you. And that's just not the case. And so I just urge you that we have to be Christians about this stuff. You can have your feelings. You're entitled to them. You're entitled to your emotions. You're not entitled to skew the facts before we establish them. Anyway. So he says, it'll haunt me till the day I die, but it's not just the video of this one incident. For many black people, it's never just about one incident, just as it wasn't about the videos of Eric Garner, Tamir Rice, Philando Castile, Sandra Bland, Laquan McDonald, Walter Scott, Rodney King, etc., etc., etc. This is about how being a black man in America has shaped both the way I see myself and the way others have seen me my whole life. It's about being told to leave the sneaker store as a 12-year-old because I was taking too long to decide which sneakers I wanted to buy with my birthday money. and the white saleswoman assumed I was in the store to steal something. Let me stop there because this resonates with me. I've said this many times on my channel, but I remember one time I was in Modell's in New York City. I was there on a school trip, and me and my buddies, they were all white. Me and my buddies went into Modell's, and we were just looking around shopping, and a man followed me around the store. And at first I thought to myself, maybe he's just following me around the store because I have a big starter jacket on, right? I had kind of a baggy starter jacket on. But I thought about that for 2 minutes, and it's like, no, all my friends had baggy starter jackets on, right? He chose me out of my, I don't know, it was like maybe 5 or 6 friends. 5 of them were white, I was not, and he chose me to follow around the store. And it made me feel uncomfortable, and I didn't like it, and all that kind of stuff. I never forgot that. I remember that to this day. So this resonates with me. He says this. He says, it's about being handcuffed and thrown to the back of a police car while walking down the street during college, and then waiting for a white couple to come identify whether or not I was the one who'd committed a crime against them, knowing that if they had said I was the one, I would be immediately taken to jail, no questions asked. You know, this is a weird one. I've been arrested before. I definitely did what I was arrested for. I was arrested before, so that's happened to me. But this is a weird one. So if a white couple came and identified you as someone who had done a crime, why wouldn't the police officer take you to jail? I mean, what do you expect them to do? I mean, you know, this happens with white folks too, Shai. So this is a weird kind of thing. What I'm supposed to believe is that that's racist. But number one, it doesn't look like he was taken to jail. So the white couple said, no, this wasn't the guy. And number two, like, what's supposed to happen? That's how police work is done. If someone is a witness to you being a criminal, then you get arrested and then you go to trial. And then if it turns out you weren't the criminal, you don't get convicted. I mean, what's supposed to happen here? But you see, there's a narrative being pushed here. And Shai, I'm not going to tell you that you shouldn't feel disgusted or annoyed or whatever it is about being arrested or being held by the cops. Because I was annoyed and all that kind of stuff. I in fact, when I was arrested, I was doing a crime with my white girlfriend at the time, and she wasn't arrested and I was. So I was annoyed by that. But what am I supposed to believe here? Like, the cop was racist? No, I think there's probably something else at play there. But anyway, let's continue. It's about walking down the street as a young man and beginning to notice that white people, especially women, would cross to the other side of the street and to avoid walking past me, and me beginning to preemptively cross the other side to save myself to save them the trouble of being afraid and to save me of the humiliation of the silent transaction. And so the idea here is that racist white women in particular crossed to the other side of the street when they saw him coming, and so they're racist, and that's been damaging to him and all that kind of stuff. And, you know, I got to say, like, again, like, it just assumes so much. And that's the thing, Shai. This is why this is such a problem for so many people, because you're assuming so much about people based on their skin color. You know, this is a story I told, and actually I've got a story from this past weekend. But I was arrested once, you know, and I did the crime that I was arrested for. And when I was in jail, I met 3 people. I met a black guy, I met a Latino homeless guy, and I met a white guy. And I've told this story before. You could look it up on my YouTube channel. I think it's called Storytime with Ol AD. And I talked about how the black guy wasn't afraid of him. The Latino guy, I wasn't afraid of him. The white guy I met, I was afraid of. I was very afraid of the white guy. It was just a snap judgment I made based on appearance, right? And it turned out that he was the one facing the most serious charges as well. So my instincts served me well. But the reality is, like, are we really gonna say that that women, if they're nervous to be around a man, that they're the ones that have a problem? Like, are we really going to go there? Because that kind of conflicts with some of the Me Too stuff and things like that. You don't know anything about these women, because some women have experienced really bad things at the hand of a man, and you're assuming that it's because you're a black man. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't, but you're assuming that. You see, that tells me about the condition of your own mind more than it does them. Because the reality is, and this is a story from this weekend, I went to a park with my sons and my wife, and we saw a very old school kind of car that, you know, the kind of car that you see in an episode of Unsolved Mysteries. and it had a lot of old Confederate flag stickers on the back and stuff like that. And all of a sudden, my spidey sense is tingling. My spidey sense is, look, I'm a northerner. So that got my spidey sense to tingle, right? Okay, there's a white dude around here, and he's got a weird-looking old-school car that looks like right out of the episode of Unsolved Mysteries, and he's got Confederate flags. I'm going to keep my head on a swivel. That's what this weekend I did this. And I saw the guy, and he was shirtless, looked really shady. He was just kind of creepily hanging around the park and stuff like that. So I kept my eyes open. I kept my head on a swivel. I was watching him. Was that appropriate for me to do? I could certainly see arguments on both sides. But does that say anything about that particular man? Or does it say something about me? You understand what I'm trying to say to you? Like, that man could have been the nicest guy in the world. I don't know. But I was keeping my head on a swivel. Was that wrong? I don't think that was wrong, by the way, to do that. But you see, that whole interaction, that whole silent transaction that Shai Linne's talking about here, that reveals a lot about me. It doesn't really reveal anything about that person since you don't know that person. This guy could have been a pastor. I have no idea. This guy could have been the nicest guy in the world. I have no idea. He could have not been creepily hanging around the park because I just characterize it as creepily. He could have just been enjoying the nice weather after 2 months of isolation and quarantine, just like I was doing. That's what it could have been. Or it could have been he was a creep. So the thing is, like, we all do this. And that's one of the things about this letter, Shai, that I think is a problem. Because this is part of being human. We all kind of do this. And there's nothing special. I know this is heresy in the woke church. There's nothing special about being a black man in America in 2020 because we've all experienced stuff like you're experiencing. If I saw a Latino, dressed like a cholo coming at me in a street, I would probably be on guard more than if I saw a little old lady walking down the street towards me. I'd be on guard more. Would that be a problem? I don't actually think that's a problem, but that would reveal a lot more about me than it would about that cholo. You know what I'm saying? It's just that simple. It's just that simple. And so I know what you're trying to do here, but this is revealing your own heart more so than it reveals anybody else. It's just that simple. He says this. He says, it's about taking a road trip with my sons to visit Blair's family in Michigan, and my greatest fear being getting pulled over for no other reason than driving while black. Told to get out of the car, cuffed, and sat down on the side of the road, utterly emasculated and humiliated with my young boys, looking out the window, terrified, which is exactly what happened to a good friend of mine when he took his family on a road trip. It's about the exhaustion of constantly feeling I have to assert my humanity in front of some white people I'm meeting for the first time, to let them know, hey, I'm not a threat. You don't need to be afraid. If you got to know me, I'm sure we have things in common. It's about me sometimes asking my wife to do things in a certain customer service situation, since I know she'll likely get treated better than I will. It's about borrowing a baby swing from a white friend in our mostly white suburb of DC, and her telling me, sure, you can borrow it, I have to step out, but I'll leave it on the front porch for you, just go grab it. And then feeling heart palpitations as my car approached her home, debating whether or not to get the swing, and being terrified as I walked up the steps that someone would think I was stealing it and call the cops on me. It's about intentionally making sure that the car seats are in the car, even if the kids aren't, so that when, not if it happens all the time, I'm stopped by the police, they will perhaps notice the car seats and also the wedding band on one of my visible hands on the wheel, which I've been taught to keep there and not to move until he tells me to, and even then in an exaggeratedly slow manner, and perhaps will think to himself, this man is married with a family and small kids like me, maybe he wants to get home safely to his family, just like I do. I think we can all see, I'm going to continue, but I think we can all see how this is revealing a ton about Shai's own heart. And I don't think he would deny that because he seems like a reasonable guy, but let's continue and we'll talk about what I want to talk about. It's about having to explain to my 4-year-old son at his mostly white Christian school that the kids who laughed at him for having brown skin were wrong, that God made him in his image, and that his skin is beautiful after he told me, Daddy, I don't want brown skin, I want white skin. It's about having what feels like genuine fellowship with my white brothers and sisters who share the same Reformed theology until I mention racism, injustice, or police brutality, at which point I'm looked at skeptically as if I embrace a social gospel or am some kind of liberal or social justice warrior. And it's about sometimes feeling like some of my white friends aren't that particularly interested in truly knowing me, at least not in any meaningful way that might actually challenge their preconceptions. Rather, it feels like they use me to feel better about themselves because I check off the black friend box. Much more could be mentioned. These are just the first things that came to my mind. You know, again, there's how do I say this? So, just like in the beginning, right? There's some things here, like you can't tell Shai he doesn't feel the way he feels, right? You feel the way you feel, and that's that. But the truth is here, guys, that again, it's mixed up. His feelings, which we're not going to deny, are mixed up with opinions and things that he's putting on other people. He's doing this in his own mind. He's putting this on other people. He's saying that cop that pulled me over, he was going to shoot me unless I did exactly this whole thing. I was terrified he was going to shoot me. You know, someone was going to call the cops on me that I was stealing this baby seat. You know, my white friends, they don't really care about me. They're just trying to check off black friend in their checkoff box. Oh, I don't really have true fellowship because these people think I'm a social gospel thing. If you notice, every single one of these, almost, maybe with the exception of the one about his kid who said he wanted white skin, every single one of these, Shai is projecting something on someone. He's projecting something on someone. Why? Because of the color of their skin. You see, we all do this from time to time. We all do this. We all prejudge people. And so we need to if prejudging someone is always wrong, which I don't believe, by the way. I don't believe that prejudging someone is always wrong. But if it was, it's got to be in an impartial way. You see, the thing is, I've never thought about someone that they were some kind of social justice warrior if they mention race. But if they mention race in a certain kind of way, like if they say something like this, there's an epidemic of unarmed blacks being killed by whites, I'm required by God to look at the facts and say, well, I can't believe that. I can't go with you there because the facts indicate that is actually not the case. That is actually not the case. And so despite how you feel, which is, again, I'm not going to dispute how you feel, I can't go with you on your unfounded opinions as well. And so the thing is here, Shai, like every person, every Christian has to take responsibility for themselves, right? And so if you're going to project onto white people that they really don't care about you, they don't affirm you, they just want to check off black friend in their black friend box, that's on you, man. That's on you. Because I'm pretty sure none of them have told you that that's what they were doing. That's on you. And so you can feel however you want to feel, but you have to understand that this is not somebody else's fault that you feel this way. This is your fault that you feel this way. I think if you're white and you're watching this, I got something especially for you here. You need to respect Latinos and blacks and minorities enough to tell them the truth, man. You can't be so scared of what men think of you that you won't tell them the truth. Like, on the one hand, we're going to affirm Shai Linne's feelings. He feels a certain way. But on the other hand, we need to treat him like we would treat any other believer. And I'm going to say to you, Shai Linne, if you feel like your white friends are doing this, then you need to go to them and say, hey, are you just checking off black friend in your box? And if they tell you no, you should probably believe them. You should probably believe them. Instead of going on Gospel Coalition and just saying blanket, well, sometimes my white friends they don't really want to know me. They just want to check out black friend in their black friend box. This is the thing, man. This is what we don't like. That you just feel so comfortable slandering white people. on Gospel Coalition. And it's just, if someone were to have written an article like this about black people, it would be roundly condemned. And rightfully so. And rightfully so, because it mixes feelings and opinions, and it really, at the end of the day, what it ends up doing is ripping people based on nothing but the color of their skin and whether or not they have a uniform on. Christians can't do this, man. We can't think with our feelings. We can't think with our emotions. We just can't do it, man. We can't. I don't know if this is going to be helpful or not, but I'm just going to, we'll see. So when I watch a video like George Floyd's, it represents for me the fresh openings of a deep wound and the reliving of layers of trauma that will get exponentially compounded each time a well-meaning friend, white friend, says, all lives matter. Of course they do. But in this country, black lives have been treated like they don't matter for centuries and present inequities in criminal justice, income, healthcare, education, show that all lives don't actually matter like they should. This is why you're called a liberal, Shai Linne. This is why you're called a social justice warrior, or that you embrace the social gospel. It's not because you talk about race. It's not because you talk about injustice. It's not because you talk about police brutality. It's because you talk about them in ways that are identical to liberals, social gospel proponents, and social justice warriors. Because the reality is, inequities in criminal justice, income, housing, healthcare, education, inequities do not prove at all that black lives don't matter the way they should. At all. And so when a white person questions you on that, when they say, well, what do you mean an income inequities? Like, you seem to be saying that an income inequity is an injustice. And that needs to be proven. It could be, or it could not be. You need to prove that. Like that's something that we need more than the inequity, because that's the same kind of thing a liberal would say. And then when you hear that case being made and you say, I guess I don't have genuine fellowship with my white brothers and sisters in Christ. See, the problem is with that, Shai Linne, that you're projecting that on white people, man. We don't, if in order for us to have genuine fellowship, we have to go with you in saying that inequities in criminal justice, income, housing, healthcare, education, that's an injustice. That means all lives don't matter, or black lives don't matter. If that's what you're saying, then we can't have fellowship. Because you've decided that that's a dividing line for you. We can't have genuine fellowship if I don't agree with you on your opinions on racism, injustice, or police brutality. You're putting that on. That's not us. You're projecting that on us. I know you said you don't speak for all blacks, and you definitely don't speak for all Latinos and all that kind of stuff. But there are a lot of us who don't agree with you on this stuff. And there's a lot of white people that don't agree with you on this stuff. And the thing is, what I'd really like is if you stop projecting beliefs on us for that. Because there's nothing about me disagreeing with your opinions on injustice and racism, police brutality, that requires me to not affirm you as a person, to not think that your life matters as a person, and all that kind of stuff. You see, there's two ways to approach this. You can say, well, listen and believe kind of stuff, where it's just like, listen and then lament with me the same things I lament, and I will not do it. If you're lamenting an inequity in income, and that's just it, you're just saying, well, if there's income inequality, then that's an inequity, lament with me. The answer is no. Why would I lament that? I have to focus on these things the way a Christian is supposed to. I have to use the categories that God has given us. I have to use the commands and the law and the system of justice that God has given us. And income inequalities aren't a problem to be rectified in God's law. I mean, that's just what it is. And so I have to go with that kind of stuff. I can't think with your emotions. I can't do it. And so this video's gone on long. I'll probably come back to it to do the rest of it, because there's some interesting stuff in the rest of it. But this letter, you want us to know how you feel. That's fine. But I want you to know how I feel. How I feel is that I'm not going to just use your emotions and then make my decisions on what's just and what's right and all that stuff based on your emotions. I'm required not to do that. I can't just go with you and say, well, that George Floyd video was horrific, and I've experienced so much racism in the past, therefore George Floyd is guilty, and he was callous, and he was all these things. I can't do that. I can't do that, man. And to require me to do that in order to have fellowship with me, in order for you to think that I think your life matters, if you're going to put that on me, that's pretty sinful, man. That's pretty sinful. And I know that you don't really do it to me so much as you do it to white people in general, but that's pretty messed up, man. You want me to know how you feel? Well, that's how I feel. I feel like that's pretty messed up to hold your brothers and sisters in Christ in such low regard. Whereas if they don't agree with the same things you agree with, they don't see the facts the same way you feel, they don't feel the same way about them the way you do, that somehow they are saying that all lives don't matter like they actually should. I think I'll stop there. There's other things that are in my mind right now, but I think that's sufficient for now. If you like this video, please share it. If you want me to continue with this article, because there's some other things in it that I think are worth talking about, then that's fine. Let me end with this. Shai Linne, I don't think that you're necessarily doing this intentionally, but everyone that shares this perspective and thinks this is so helpful, let me just urge some caution for you. Because Christians should listen to how you feel about things. They definitely should. But let's not use that as a weapon to inject your ideologies into it as well. Because I can affirm, I think most Christians can, and this is what we're trying to do. We're trying to hold this together. I can affirm my love for you as a brother, and I want to hear how you're feeling, and I want to lament the things that are lamentable in what you're feeling. You understand what I'm saying? Like, I want to hear it. I want to hear your pain, and I want to share my pain with you as well. So we want to do that, but we want to do that in a way that doesn't compromise us as far as the truth is concerned, because God requires me to be devoted to the truth. I should be loving you, but I should be devoted to the truth, because the truth is a person. And I love Jesus Christ more than I love you, Shai. You know what I mean? If you require things of me in order to really feel loved by me that God has commanded me not to do, I'm sorry, then I'm just gonna have to stop. I can't go with you all the way. We have to establish the matters first before we can do all that kind of stuff. Like don't use the good desire of Christians to listen to you to ramrod your ideology in there, and don't require them to believe your ideology in order to feel like you have true fellowship with them. That's so twisted, man. That's so twisted. I hope you can hear my heart there, because I think that's where a lot of white folks are falling right now, where they're like, man, like I feel so sad when I see this stuff, and I feel like, man, you guys really believe that when you drive down the street, you're just going to get arrested for being black? You're going to be shot for jogging and stuff like that? You guys really believe? That's a really sad thing to believe. But I've also got to look at the data. I've got to look at the truth and establish the truth of the matter here. And I think a Christian can do both. A Christian is required to do both. And so stop using this whole thing about listening and lamenting as a weapon to drive your ideology and your political preferences through. It's not Christian, man. It's not something that's good to do. You're not going to fall for it. Anyway, I hope this video is helpful. God bless. You know, one of the reasons why God requires you to have evidence and requires you to be devoted to the truth and make certain commands towards you on how to deal with conflict and stuff like that is a lot of times we don't know how to help someone unless we know what the facts of the matter are. So in other words, if I were so deathly afraid to go outside and I said, I can't go outside, I can't go to work, I can't do any of those things because there's a lion outside that's going to eat me. Okay? So, like, we would have to figure out, if that's true, that there's a lion outside or not, or if that's that's something that I should be worried about or should not. Like, if I live in New Hampshire, I probably shouldn't be worried about lions, but maybe if I lived on a nature preserve or something in Africa, it'd be legitimate to worry about lions. So we don't, the point is, we don't know how to help someone unless we know what's actually true first. And with the reality is, with this narrative of like, I'm so scared to be shot by a cop every time I step outside, that narrative is not supported by the facts. And so the only way to help someone who's feeling that way is to know those facts and to bring those facts into conflict with that person's beliefs. There's nothing loving about feeding an irrational fear. And the reality is, if you're black in the United States, it is an irrational fear to be petrified of being killed by a police officer when you're walking around the streets. That kind of thing simply doesn't happen at the rates the media would traumatize you to believe that it happens. It's just not the case. Larry Elder always says, you're much more likely to be struck by lightning and killed than you are to be killed by a police officer. And so it would be irrational for me to be worried about being struck by lightning. And so in order to know how to deal with me when I have that kind of an irrational fear, you need to know what the case is first. That's why the truth is so important in the lives of a Christian, because we don't really know how to love our neighbor until we know what the truth is first. That's why I do what I do. Anyway, I hope you found this helpful. God bless.